Last time, we looked at how the rhythms of Africa would end up shaping the music that took the world by storm, the rich musical traditions of New Orleans, and explained why everyone actually loves jazz. In this episode, we continue to follow those influences as music starts to influence wider culture and starts getting political. I'm Charlotte Ritchie, and welcome to, For the Record, an incomplete history of music. We've talked a lot in this series about musicality and being musical, but something incredibly musical that we've not yet mentioned is, well, the musical itself. So I guess we best head to Broadway. $1,000, a matinee, a pinter play, perhaps a piece of Mahler's. I'll drink to that. And one for Mahler.
The musical that we understand today, which I refer to as the American musical, first of all, is not strictly American. It doesn't have geographical borders, to be clear. I refer to it as the American musical because it is an art form that matured principally on American shores in the middle of the 20th century. No one person invented the American musical. No one show changed the entire trajectory of the evolution of this art form that we understand today. Many pieces go into the maturation of what we understand as the American musical. That includes British operetta or British comic opera, hence Gilbert and Sullivan. That includes the variety show of the 1800s. That includes vaudeville in particular, throughout the first 3 decades of the 20th century, burlesque, by which I do not mean striptease, I mean burlesque as it existed pre-30s, which is primarily slapstick, travesty, knockabout comedy. There is revue, which is extraordinarily influential in shaping the book musical or the story musical. So multiple different styles happening in the early years of what will come to be the American musical. Which is essentially the coalescing of all of these different styles and forms in the mid-20th century, and really a maturation. A large number of individuals, particularly the most prominent individuals, are not only interested in telling the stories that they want to tell, they are also interested in so doing, bettering this art of musical storytelling. And that fact gets often completely lost.
It was Oscar Hammerstein who actually introduced the idea of intelligence into musical comedy with Showboat, which was a serious show, but it was a musical. And what he had done was he had amalgamated the European tradition of operetta with the American lighthearted musical comedy. But under his hands, and between that and Oklahoma, he revolutionized the American musical theater so that a whole generation, my generation, were able to bring something of a genuine feeling for story, for character, and what you would call intelligence to musicals. But that really all happened after the Second World War because of Hammerstein's revolution.
There is this misperception about musicals in particular, prior to 1970 being one sound, one story, and especially having nothing to do with social issues or political issues. Again, this is completely false, and there are plenty of examples of politically pointed or socially prescient musicals. And yet musicals, for some reason, continue to be, as I say, minimized or dismissed, not taken seriously necessarily. I would say even by several artists in the field who do not take musicals seriously.
And then there are the musicals that make fun of musicals. And that's college level stuff. I mean, making fun of what you're writing is nothing more than college, and nothing less either. And there's room for college musicals. But musicals that really try to do something or say something or try to experiment with the form are few and far between.
No one person invented the musical, but Stephen Sondheim is said by many to have reinvented it. Of course, not all musicals before him were light and fluffy, but Sondheim is seen as a bridge between being artistically ambitious, intellectually serious, and, crucially for Broadway, commercially successful. Mentored by Hammerstein, Sondheim would tackle difficult themes and address much of the darker sides of what it meant to be human, not least in Into the Woods, considered by some to be his masterpiece, which deconstructs some traditional musical fare, like fairy tales, where things very much do not end happily ever after.
I, like many people before me, thought that the first act was the end of the show. And then I remember watching the second act and being kind of upset that this was happening to these characters, because they were characters I knew and loved and people I liked. I remember even at the time feeling very challenged by it and sort of grateful and thinking I should watch this one again when I'm older. And now, of course, it's the bit of the piece that is the most rewarding, and that's where all the thematic resonance really lies for me, and it's really the only reason that it should even exist, is to get to the meat of that second part of the piece, to see what happens when these characters are really tested.
It's such a potent medium, and there is so much ability in a musical to capture who we are. This is, of course, what the musical stage has done throughout time, capture our society, our consciousness, essentially.
It's very hard to do that if you don't take the audience with you. The songs make them feel isolated from the experience, you know. But when it's done right, it's like songs are like soliloquies, you know, that they allow characters to say, this is how I'm feeling, without it being like, this is how I'm feeling.
Yes, she's singing, and we exist in a world where she doesn't know she's singing. You know, she hasn't broken into song. She isn't, in real life, she's not speaking in rhyme. But it was just so clever and cheeky, because it's almost too clever. And even while her withers wither with her is not quite as knowing and clever. And because it's so knowing, we decided to kind of play with the idea that Cinderella is sort of proud of herself for coming up with that line.
But musicals that really try to do something or say something or try to experiment with the form are few and far between. And so it's not exactly a dead-end street, but it's a very narrow tunnel to get to write something and to get it heard by a large number of people and heard properly.
I think the commercial attraction or the cultural prescience of the musical has to do with its interdisciplinary nature and the fact that it is incorporating so many different elements.
You know, people say, oh, I don't like musicals. And it's like, how many musicals have you seen? And they've seen one musical, or they've never seen a musical. Like, you don't know, there are so many different musicals that you've seen. There are so many different things that you have not experienced. And yeah, of course you can go, I'm not doing that. And that's fine, but enjoy your joyless life. Like, just go out there and have a try. I think it's crazy the way that people would just be like, wipe out an entire art form or an entire like type of music or whatever, and just be like, no, that's not for me. It's like, there are so many different types of that thing, and you're only ruining your own enjoyment. Like, that sucks for you. And also, I don't want to be around people like that. I don't want to be around people who are like, oh, no, like, just shut up. Go and see it. Just go write down 3 nice things about it. You might surprise yourself.
I think that the people who accuse the musicals of being cold may also be people who either they. No, I think I will censor that remark.
I guess when you go to the theatre, what you want is an experience that allows you to escape from your life. The amazing thing about sitting in a theatre, it's the same in a cinema, but it's something about theatres where there's as much behind the curtain as there is in front of it, that you're in a box sharing this experience that will only happen that night. That particular version of that show will only happen that night. And there's something about musicals that help that sense of transcending or escaping reality. There's something about a world where people can sing and where music is an element of how we express ourselves that allows us to shared reality.
Musicals take many forms all over the world, but there is one particular sort of musical theatre unique to Britain, the pantomime.
At a basic level, a pantomime is a show for families that's predominantly aimed at children. It is a retelling of a fairy tale. That's quite specific. It sort of has to be a retelling of a fairy tale. It's very interactive. So the Dame is a traditional character in pantomime who is a man dressed as a woman and is usually playing the mother, but they're usually the comedy character. Let's think some famous British actors that have played them. John Inman from Are You Being Served? Clive Rowe, who's like a big musical theatre star. Ian McKellen has played a pantomime Dame. And they tend to look after the comedy for the adults. And then the musical elements don't necessarily have to relate to what's going on, although it's better if they do. And it's for everyone. So for instance, when I was a kid, I remember going to see Oklahoma and sitting there bored out of my mind. And potentially now, as an adult, I might go and see Bluey and be bored out of my mind. Whereas a pantomime is intended for everyone to enjoy on every level all the time. The more commercial pantos will use pop songs. So you'll hear current pop songs, but then you sort of ideally go back about 20 years to the songs that are now absolute classics. So you'll get Reach for the Stars, Tide is High, the Atomic Kitten version, obviously, and things like that. And then you go even further back to music your grandparents are going to know, and then you'll have musical theatre stuff in there. But an in-house production might involve original music, and this is sort of the argument. Some people are like, do I want music that I recognise and can sing along to, but doesn't necessarily relate to what's happening, but is going to get the energy really high? Or do I want songs that relate to the plot, have a bop, but everyone is going to have to sit and watch passively because they've never heard it before in their life?
The same debate exists in musical theatre too.
Shows now do not depend on young writers as much as they do on tried and true material. I mean, that's the so-called jukebox musicals, the musicals like Mamma Mia, which are collections of songs that are already known to the public, that have been pre-written, so to speak.
The art form exists. And so we're now in a state of perpetual existence. So the evolution that is occurring, or if one wants to look at eras or what's going on now and sort of break it up into categories, jukebox musicals, this particular idea, that's what's going on now. I don't see them as, and they are not, different in principle from anything the form has previously experienced necessarily. Each is different in its own way, and there's absolutely a newness that can be had. Hamilton is a great example of that newness, that is marrying this idea of newness and convention, but Hamilton doesn't break the form.
And of course, we can't forget about Bollywood.
So if we look at the history of Bollywood music, we have to go back something like 2,000 years, actually. Yes, 2,000 years. It actually goes back to traditional and classical Sangeeta, which has its roots in the theatre. So this is kind of Parsi theatre, this is classical Hindustani theatre, this is theatre amalgamated with other parts of migration and movement that was happening around around that time, 2,000 plus years ago. So in the theatre, it was commonplace for some of the big epic stories to have music accompaniments and even singing accompaniments. Bollywood from its inception has been an amalgamation of globalization, actually. So even from the very start, where it started telling its kind of mythological stories, so these were stories based around Krishna, Ram and Sita, or the Mahabharata, actually it owes its roots to the ways in which D.G. Palki, who is often touted as the kind of one of the founding figures or the founding figure of Indian cinema, D.G. Palki, he was inspired by the life of Christ and seeing early Christian films, Christian mythology, Christian fables and stories transported onto the cinematic, and he thought, what would it like to tell Indian stories on the screen? So there you see that kind of mixture and that borrowing of that technology, but also a tradition of storytelling in the West, or Christianity writ large, which then was translated and adapted for the Indian context. So this is where you've got the kind of the classic roots of it, where you would have simple instrumentation or a few instrumentation accompanying the story, lifting the story through the music score and then singing and dancing. But then this is where then from the post-1930s onwards, with the first film, Alamara, the first sound film in Indian kind of cinema, and the arrival of sound in cinema from the late 20s, early 30s onwards, this is where we see the songs and dance come to life on the big screen. And then we have the introduction of the musical orchestra, and then we have the introduction of the playback singers, because what happened was not all, in fact almost all the stars could not sing, as was the case, I think, globally around the world with most transitions from silent to sound cinema. And this is where then the playback singers, as they're called, people singing in the background, giving voice, giving melody to the actors and actresses on screen, they start to come into their own from the 30s, 40s onwards. A Bollywood song is a song for all seasons and all emotions. The interesting thing about the Bollywood song is it has to work in order to show, promote and tell the story. So in one song, you could almost kind of get a subset of the film, or you could get a key episode in the film. So if you miss that song, you could potentially miss a crucial moment of the film. And in a 3-hour film, you can kind of make it up, but then also you think, hang on a minute, what's just happened here? Oh, I might have to go back and watch that song again. But actually, some of the classic ways that we might characterize the song is lavish production value. So you have a huge orchestral score, and for that that song would accompany the A-lister stars of the day, the actor and actresses of the day. You would have a musical score, a musical orchestra that isn't just Hindustani, that isn't just classical Indian, but actually, depending on the composer and who's behind the scene, it could also be a mixture of the modern and the tradition and the global all at once. But really lavish production, huge kind of production values, and an orchestral score is often what can characterize a good or a conventional Bollywood musical score.
Like all music, the musical will continue to evolve, incorporating all manner of genres into its storytelling. When you walk into a record shop like this, you expect to find some kind of system. You like to know where you might find a certain artist, and one of the most common ways of doing that is by sorting things by genre. Unless you're Stuart Lee or Rob Gordon from High Fidelity, in which case all bets are off.
I think of genre as being like those, music with an accent again. So if you take metal as an example, metal sounds like metal because it uses the vernacular of metal, and you're maybe playing it with the musical accent that metal is usually, a Brummy accent basically. But the guitars sound the guitar tone is a certain way, the singing is a certain style. It's all of these cultural cues that we take to place things in a genre.
But the problem with genre is that it's fluid, and humans usually prefer rigidity, especially when it comes to filing. We like it when things fit neatly into little boxes. For example, at the time, people were furious when Bob Dylan went electric, and there's always debates around what categories certain films and TV shows should be put into for award shows. Take Beyoncé's win for Best Country Album at the 2024 Grammy Awards. Was it actually country, or was it not? Should it have been nominated in a different category? What even is country music? A lot of people got very, very upset about this. A black artist like Beyoncé co-opting a traditionally white genre, like country. It was just like when Little Richard stole rock and roll from Elvis, and the Sugar Hill Gang stole rap from Vanilla Ice, or when Big Mama Thornton stole Hound Dog from Elvis, or when Otis Blackwell stole Return to Sender from Elvis, or even when Arthur Crudup went on to have one of the biggest careers in the history of rock and roll music by stealing the career-launching song That's All Right Mama from Elvis.
Well, now that's all right now, Mama. That's all right for you. That's all right, baby, any way you do. Now that's all right. That's all right. That's all right now, Mama, any way you do.
Multiple music historians consider Crudup's That's All Right Mama, written and recorded in 1946, to be the very first true rock and roll song, and certainly the first song to feature a guitar solo. Sadly, the father of rock and roll called it quits in the 50s before he ever made it big, saying,
I realized I was making everybody rich, and here I was, poor.
The same was true of many black artists of the time. They saw their music shoot to the top of the charts when covered by white artists. Elvis Presley covered That's All Right Mama as his first single, along with 2 other Crudup songs. Throughout his life, Crudup made barely $2,000 in royalties after Elvis and his publishers backed out of an agreed settlement. He became a labourer and died in poverty. Elvis Presley made an estimated $1 billion just during his lifetime.
Some appropriations are systematic, and usually when there is appropriation, it's from the most powerful to the least powerful. And of course, people are losing because they made their music, it's something cultural to them, there is some special meaning, and then when it gets reappropriated, I don't know, imagine they get sampled, in electronic music, which happens quite a bit, and there are quite a lot of examples of that in the past and now. They profit quite a bit, and then they don't give either credit or money or anything to the people that they took and music from. So of course that's wrong. But I think tributing, giving homage, like really celebrating cultures, I don't think that's wrong. If somebody wants to, if a group in Japan wants to do salsa, which actually they have fantastic orchestras of salsa and tango music, for example, in Japan, if they want to do it, go and do it. The more, how do you say that? The more the merrier or something like this. I mean, it's fantastic, do it. But give credit to where that music came from. To maybe, the instruments, where do they come from? Don't just take an instrument, for example, and then just say it's ours, or don't give any credit to the culture, the region, the area that this came from.
Should white people sing spirituals? I think to sing spirituals, you should investigate what they're about. You should, do a little bit of work and be able to say, I want to present this because this makes me feel this way. I think that's the proper way to sing a spiritual if you're not of African descent.
There's a misunderstanding between terms and what is being labeled as appropriation versus acculturation, which are 2 very different things. So acculturation is when the larger cultural body is essentially, it's a gentler assimilation.
Like society requires the internet now.
Yeah.
It just happened, we all need to use it.
This is a thing that must happen in order for people to survive. We have to live in houses now. This is all part of a larger, we speak English because if we didn't, we would not survive well in a modern context. So there is a mainstream culture that is large and kind of overarching within a group of diverse collectives. So that is acculturation, where you are forced to kind of tap into a larger mainstream.
Perhaps we're being a bit too harsh on Elvis. I mean, he was unquestionably a talented singer, incredibly talented, and he would later say that he owed Crudup a debt of gratitude, although we'd argue he owed him maybe a little bit more than that. But then he was an extremely busy man, starring in countless films, residency in Vegas, grooming 14-year-olds, etc., etc., etc.
giving credit, giving homage, saying, this is a kind of, it has been influenced by this and these people, fantastic, but don't steal.
When the smaller groups have their own distinct, vibrant, specific aspects of language, culture, spirituality, fashion, all of the things that go into making a culture what it is. And the larger culture comes in and picks through and says, yoink, 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 I like all of those things, and completely strips it away from context and meaning and authenticity.
Often after saying you
can't do it.
Do it.
Side note, yes, always that.
I would even say that there's a difference between assimilation and forced assimilation.
Yes.
Because it was very much a forced assimilation in our case. It was like, see those kids over there? They're not going to learn how to do any of that. We're going to make them sing these Christmas carols. They are going to sing these carols. They are going to praise Jesus.
They are going to church.
In church at Christmas. Sorry, they're not coming home. So I think it's important to recognize that it wasn't like, hey, what do you got going on over there? Can we be a part of this? It was like, no, you will be.
Yeah.
You will be.
And it's a thing that happens with Black culture every single day that is, specific, regionally specific, born out of the Black experience that gets co-opted and mined by white culture and mainstream culture.
In New Orleans, I call this Afro-New Orleans culture. You can use music and culture to do whatever you want to do with it. It depends on the person who is participating as an artist or as a cultural person. But they cross each other, especially the music from New Orleans, because in the beginning it was getting away from a horrendous human experience. It was a moment to be free. And the people who came to hear that, they got a taste of something that they never realized before. And once you have a great experience, be it food, a movie, or culture, or music, you tend to want to experience that again.
And we love to share our practice with people outside of our community. That's why we do what we do. We love to share. It's incredible. It's beautiful. I feel like part of the conversation that we have that can get a little bit awkward sometimes is you can enjoy the painting on the wall at the museum, at the art gallery, and you don't have to take it home and eat it and ingest it and make copies of it and do, it can stop there. And allyship is, wow, I'm gonna really admire this and this is incredible. I'm gonna tell my friends about it. I'm gonna learn about the life and the experience of the artist that did this thing. Wow, politically, what was happening that made, that piece of art come into the world, and who else is doing this? That's allyship, that's reconciliation. What isn't reconciliation and allyship is, wow, that's amazing. How can I use this for myself now?
You like the same thing as me. How can I not be your friend? How can I not be appreciative? And it's not about comparing. It's not about expecting that person to have been born in a totally different cultural situation. Suddenly taking up tabla, I can't expect him to be the same as somebody who's born in the musician's family, had tabla from day one, but the passion is what brings us together.
And if you're using some artisans to do certain things, if you're using musicians from these cultures that you're getting your influences from, acknowledge them and pay them nicely.
The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white light, and the white people. You will not have to worry about a germ on your bedroom, a tiger in your tank, or a giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not be televised.
Gil Scott-Heron's seminal The Revolution Will Not Be Televised has been remixed any number of times into any number of genres, but the original 1971 version was simply a poem read over some drums and then eventually some jazz flute. At the time, it was dubbed by many as jazz poetry rather than a new type of genre, but it was clearly a precursor to a new genre set to take over the globe, as jazz had done, at the start of the century. At the current point in time, no genre dominates music quite like hip-hop. It is arguably more popular than pop, which I guess makes it pop, or at least a subgenre of it. It is the most streamed genre across the biggest platforms. While beyond the music, the genre is hugely influential on culture, fashion, politics, and social movements. But of course, this wasn't always the way. Quite the opposite, in fact. To understand how hip-hop became the force it is today, you have to go right back to the start, to the 1970s, to the pioneers of the genre. Or more specifically, you have to go to the Bronx.
And you say New York City. Yeah.
I influenced all the people that you love in this hip-hop game, man. If you like him, he got it from me. If you like him, he got it from me, you know what I'm saying? And I just take a lot of pride in that. So when hip-hop succeeds, I succeed. I'd be an asshole if I sat here saying, oh yeah, I knew from the jump that hip-hop, and I don't have any stake in it. I don't own anything, I don't, you know what I mean? If I'd have known that hip-hop was gonna grow to these proportions, or had a real feeling, that I probably would have invested, you know, more into it, you know, on the business side, on the ownership side, to try to get a jump on some of the things that would eventually come, like record companies and different businesses that have come out of hip-hop. I would have trademarked the word hip-hop. If I would have knew, you know, but none of us had any idea. We were in the midst of doing it, you know, and the creators are on the inside, and other people who are not the creators, they are on the outside looking in. Okay, so they see all the other possibilities outside of being a performer. Okay, because you can't rap, you can't DJ, you can't break dance, you can't, you know, do grab, but you love it, you love them, but you can't do them.
Before Whitney, Mariah, and J-Lo and Janet, before Bam and the Soul Sonic Force rocked the planet, before These Are the Breaks, before Hard Times, before the Sugar Hill Gang, and before Super Rhymes, before Reaganomics, before rappers got shot in their stomachs, before you found hip-hop and comics.
I don't think we're forgotten. I just think that time moves on. And the people from our era and our generation that were there that know, they don't forget, they know. Okay, but it's not in their hands anymore. It's in the hands of other people who've come later or come after, who don't know, who the lessons haven't been passed down to.
What makes you say so, Cap? Because I look so good and I'm the Lord of rap. How fresh? So fresh that when I was young...
For you to know who Wizzard Theodore is, you would have to know DJing.
It was always all around me. Like when I went to the store for my mom's, I seen people on the corner doo-wopping and freestyling. I seen, when I looked at the train stations, I seen the graffiti on the trains, graffiti in the schools, graffiti everywhere. I seen the b-boys b-boying and stuff like that. So it was always around me. I just didn't know what it was. So that's why I say I was born into hip hop. Born into the culture, born into the art form, because it was already here. I just didn't know what it was until I got a little bit older and started to understand what it was.
My name's KG, better known as the all. Mike T and with the 3. I'm sure you'll call or us when your ear is a need for a treat. And if you don't know the case, that's who you got to meet. I'm fourth the line, and in due time, and every rapper in the business will know that I'm serious about this, and I don't play. I told a sucker MC that just the other day, cause I learned the ropes and paid my dues. I'm going for the gold, no way that I can lose. It's EDAD that you wanted to be ever since you saw me MC. You wanted to be fine, to learn how to rhyme, even wanted to break.
You know about the Fantastic Five, know about the Cold Crush Brothers, know about Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, know about Africa Bambaataa and the Zulu Nation, know about all the graffiti artists, the B-boys, the Rocksteady crew, the New York City Breakers. Learn about all of these crews that were out in the early 70s. Hip hop has evolved into rap
music, and that's what we are listening to today. We're listening to rap music. If you're not talking about peace, love, unity, and having fun, then you're not really talking about the real hip hop, the essence of what hip hop is. And now we have rap music out today, and people have to know the difference between hip hop music and rap music.
Full of these different elements that all together make up this thing called hip hop. You know, it's not just the music. The music is the element that drives everything else, but all the other elements are just important. And when you talk about hip hop to a hip hop person, then you need to be referring to all of those elements.
Many of these elements of hip-hop are now commonplace across all of culture, and not just in music, but from sound to style to slang. And one sound in particular has become so widespread that it's easy to forget that somewhere along the line, someone had to be the first person to do it. The first person to do this. The first person who decided that actually scratching a record was an excellent idea.
Playing with my mother's stereo in her house. She had the stereo that looked like a big coffin with the TV in the front. Then you lift it up and you look inside and you got the 8-track tapes, and then you got the turntable there. I used to play her 45s and skip the needle back on the break beats and stuff like that, not knowing that I was developing the needle drop style, you know? And I was saying to myself, wow, this is something that I've never seen anybody else do. So I need to keep doing it, and make sure that I perfect it, because I never heard anybody else doing it before. And once I got on the big turntables, that's when I was able to do the scratch. Because I actually created the needle drop before I created the scratch. And now here it is today, 49 years later, and it's something the world can't live without, you know?
Only a few will understand. Only a few will understand and appreciate what's about to happen.
Hip hop was our lifestyle. A lot of people did hip hop for different reasons. Some people did hip hop because they were having problems with maybe drugs or single parent homes and gang activity and all this stuff. That's where hip hop came from. You know, that's what was going on when we were doing hip hop back in the 70s. And it wasn't even called hip hop, it was called disco. You know? So it really didn't start to be called hip hop until like 79, 80. We made nothing into something. People were like, oh wow, this is like, something is about to happen.
I shoot the yell, and in the post clear. Vocals are coming in the coast clear. The force, conjugate herbs, we conjugate herbs and constipate nerves like you. Hey, I'm here to end the conspiracy industry, so you can really check it out. MCs at hand to the fish on the stick shit. The eclectic, hectic, desperate to sound.
Around the same time as hip-hop culture was coming to prominence in the Bronx, elsewhere in New York and further west in Detroit, another new musical style was developing: punk. Bands in the mid-70s like the Velvet Underground and the New York Dolls were early key influences, but it was in the UK in 1976 that punk rock became a true social and musical movement.
For me, growing up in the 70s, a 70s kid, I was, growing up in Blackpool, I had no idea you could join in with this stuff. You know, I mean, there was a couple of kids at school who could play guitar, but they were kind of weird, nerdy kids. You know, the idea of playing a guitar was like, they could play like it's super classical. It's like, no way am I ever going to be able to do that. So punk rock came along, and that was a regeneration of glam in a sense. And the groups looked great, sounded great, and it was really exciting. But there's also another underlying message: you could actually do this yourself. And I don't know if I misinterpreted this, but probably like a lot of people in small towns, it's the DIY ethic of punk was a revolutionary moment. It's like you can actually be in a band, and you don't have to have any talent at all. You could just go and do it, which is great. I think that's a great message, that, you know. But I didn't join a band, I formed a band. So I just basically forced my two mates to be in a band with me, and that's how we started. I got a bass from Woolworths for about 10 quid, and we didn't know how to tune it up. So we didn't know what we thought these metal things at the end, the machine heads, we didn't know they were for tuning up. So we played the first gig, totally out of tune, We didn't know what chords or scales were. It was just three of us. The drummer was just hitting the snare drum, trying to keep time. We didn't know anything about the building blocks, construction, what music was, how you made it. We just did it anyway. And I think that's to me, that's the best gig I'll ever play, because it was so innocent, but also it was so pure. You're just playing what's right in front of you. That's basically what's coming out, isn't it? You're not filtered or trapped by any musical ideas. It must have sounded awful, but it was absolutely perfect.
Obviously, the music is a key part of punk, particularly how loud it's played. But much like hip-hop, punk was about much more than just the sounds.
It's all about not just the music, it's the clothes, the style, what you think, how you walk. It's all in there in the thing. It's a 360 package, isn't it? The first time I heard punk, I didn't hear it, I saw a picture. And I thought, wow, I know what that sounds like, and I was imagining it in my head. So I think that's really important. So the art culture, they're almost like soundtracks to a culture. It's which way round is it? It's really important. I mean, it's no coincidence that the Pistols came out of a clothes shop, which I think is perfect in a way, isn't it? All culture comes out of space, doesn't it? But these days it'll come out of a website because it's a digital space. But coming out of a clothes shop where mad, weird kids could hang out and coalesce and make things happen was perfect, wasn't it? That's what made the Pistols so amazing. And it's very simplistic. It's not about how we're going to sort the economy out, or it's all about I just want to be free. And it boils down to that. So I think an example of that is Anarchy in the UK. And I've always thought Anarchy in the UK is not a song about the theory of anarchism, really, but the general overlying feeling of that song is the anarchy that they're singing about, and as you get as a teenager, is you just want to be free as a teenager. It's that 2-3 years of your life where you can stay up for 3 days, do loads of crazy stuff and not feel anything at all. You have no responsibilities and you can just go completely mad, and that's the anarchy of youth. And I think, to me, that's probably the politics of pop in a sense. And some of the most political songs aren't directly political, are they? And some of them are more, like Strange Fruit's very, very poetic, isn't it? I mean, it's a powerful song, isn't it? I saw Lieback do a version of the other night. It's like, whew, that was amazing. And everyone knows what that's about. They don't have to explain it. When you explain stuff, it's like being at school, isn't it? They just played that, very stark, very powerful, and everyone goes, yep, Donald Trump times, isn't it? And it's clever like that. I think if you over-egg it, it switches people off. No one goes to a gig to go to school, do they? But everyone goes to the gig to celebrate the freedom and the countercultural ideas, and they're there in the space, aren't they? And they're celebrated without them being underlined, I think.
Hip-hop and punk are two clear examples, but politics and music have never been separate, and for good reason.
For me as a researcher, in the things that I do that are very political, music is an excuse to talk to people about certain things that they wouldn't say if I'm addressing them in a very direct way. So through music, I can get to discuss trauma, I can get to discuss discrimination, racism, homophobia, violence, and I can really, really discuss those things through music, because you cannot close your ears. You can close your eyes if you see something really awful, but try closing your ears. Music is all around every single time, so people associate it with different things. And I use those associations in order to research and to do more.
Billy Bragg, I think, famously says that music can't change the world, but people can change the world and music can change people. And I think that's a pretty good way of looking at it. I mean, there's been times that I've sort of used my music to some degree more directly. I did a lot of benefits for the Labour Party in the run-up to the 2019 election, to a comically poor result. But, you wonder how much better we would have done if I hadn't bothered. But
as a composer and having been a Pan-Africanist as a student in the 70s, learning about Free Azania movement and all the movements that were happening during the 70s, I was very familiar with social activism, and I wondered how I could contribute to that kind of activism with classical music, which I'd seen nobody else doing. My first piece on my master's degree was called Suspected. And it was about the intimidation of persons, especially men of African heritage, who at that time in the 70s were disproportionately being stopped and searched by police. He's a classical musician. And It's a piece written for piano. It's about 20 minutes long, actually. And my professor was taken aback. He said, oh, gosh, this is very political, isn't it? And to me, it wasn't politics. It was my experience, because that's what was happening around me. And that was my way of contributing to the activism, documenting these social events through music.
I think musicians are very dangerous. I mean, they can get really dangerous. Otherwise, why were they so persecuted in many countries? Or why are they being persecuted in many countries? I mean, we have in Latin America lots of cases of musicians that were killed by dictatorships. They were persecuted, they had to go to exile. So music is not only entertainment and escapism then, if governments persecute musicians. But Bunny himself, I mean, he was threatened several times because of the message that his performance would give, which is, I'm going to sing in Spanish in a period of time where, you know, we Latinos are being persecuted in the States, and I don't need to explain why here, but you know, they are being persecuted, and then I'm going to sing in Spanish. I'm going to move my body in the way that I want, which is associated to my culture. I'm going to discuss topics in the lyrics that are tough.
That's what I want to bring to the stage. Of course, a lot of my culture.
And I'm going to make my people, let's say the Latinos, which are many in the States, dance and discuss these things while we have fun for 13 minutes. So it's very, very powerful, I think.
People only have to worry about dance. I know that I told them that they had 4 months to learn Spanish. They don't even have to learn Spanish. They just, it's better if they learn to dance. But I think there's no better dance than the one that can come from the heart. The heartbeat dance. That's the only thing that they need to worry about and have fun and enjoy it.
You can spur people on, I think. I mean, I think the biggest kind of charge leveled at political musicians is like, all you do is preach to the converted. That's sort of something people have said to me for years and years and years. Well, you know, it's just preaching to the converted. And I think that's not really the way that I look at it. I look at it more like, well, I see it as putting gas in their tank, because everybody needs that. And I think there is no like greater sort of force acting on us, is that sense that we're alone.
If you think for 3 minutes your world could be changed, you could hear a song on the radio or see something on Top of the Pops that could blow your mind, could suddenly make you feel like, that's me, that speaks to me, this is me.
You know, and I think it's very easy these days to feel alone. It's very easy to feel disconnected from everybody. Everyone's in their little bubbles shouting at each other on social media, and I think it's very easy to think, well, I'm just one person and I can't possibly make any difference. And I think the thing that I see my little songs and my little gigs as impacting in some very small way is if at least you're singing along with 50 other people who are singing the same thing, for those 2 hours, you at least can go, hey, it's not just me. There are other people who like see that this is wrong, right? There are other people who want to change things. There are other people who believe the same things as me.
I think music could be enormously important in terms of getting people politically engaged. Though, of course, an enormous number of people wouldn't have, cared one jot. In some ways, I think those of us who were not Duran fans or Spandau Ballet fans, we didn't really see that. It was as if that was all about what you looked like and the hat you wore. Even though underneath it all, I'm sure that there was politics. Well, I suppose, not as actually no. I think there was that point where Annie Nightingale, who was one of the longest serving Radio 1 DJs ever, I think possibly, and the first female Radio 1 DJ, she used to do a Sunday night request show and had a Duran Duran band. And I remember the first time she played Duran Duran, I thought, it's over now. That's it. This was the one place we were safe from Duran Duran. But I think, the whole Rock Against Racism movement.
The National Front must be stopped, and all other Nazi movements and racialist movements must be stopped in their tracks. And what the significance of this and the excitement of it is that we've brought together tens of thousands of people who've never been on this kind of anti-racialist event before, but who have done so today. It's the beginnings, I think, of our fight back against the racialist backlash in this country.
For the generation slightly before me, kind of the Clash were incredibly important as an introduction to politics. And then I think for my generation, it really was two-tone. So that was my first really full-on obsession with music. And of course, also things like the Specials and Madness and the Selector. All of them were also introductions to politics as well. So, this was, I think Terry Hall, I remember there was Man at C&A, which is a fantastic song from More Specials, where in an introduction he goes, "This is going to be your last chance to dance before Nuclear Armageddon." And so it was kind of in connection also with the rise of Margaret Thatcher and those kind of things.
The genre of music where the lyrics themselves are the most overtly political, well, that honour goes to folk.
That definitely comes from this late 50s folk revival. In this country, so the oldest independent record label in the world is Topic Records, which is a folk record label. But that was the musical arm of the Workers' Music Association, I think. It was part of the Communist Party in the UK. So the people who are kind of regarded as the figureheads of that period are Ewan MacColl and Burt Lloyd. Ewan MacColl was an actor and performer, and he did a series of radio broadcasts for the BBC called The Radio Ballads with a producer called Charles Parker. And the way they did those was they went and interviewed people in different trades of different experiences and interspersed field recordings of speech of people talking about their lives with songs that Ewan MacColl had written. So they're kind of newly written folk songs in a traditional folk style. And I think it's the first time that was ever really successfully done in this country, for sure. I suppose those ideas probably also come from Woody Guthrie and those kind of singer-songwriters from the Great Depression. It was a bit of a proof that it was possible to write songs about current events and make them blur invisibly with the traditional. So that's kind of, I suppose, the root of it. Folk music has this idea that it's about ordinary people who, it's almost like this patronising idea that they were kind of, the illiterate people, that you're going to collect music from the people who don't really understand music and, kind of idiot savants almost. But actually, it's the nuance is the really complicated bit.
Well then, Pete, what are you doing here in New York City? Well, it's a funny thing, but people in this big town are beginning to like my kind of music too.
I think there was an idea in the folk revival, I'd have to say a marketing idea, that folk music is all about authenticity, and it's not a thing that you practice, and it's not a thing that you're supposed to know what you're doing. It's like rough and ready, and it's better because it's authentic that way. And I think Ewan MacColl was very much of the opinion that it's a thing that you could practice and you could learn and you could have peer feedback, and we can improve the standard of doing it in this country by studying it. The methods by which he did that are a little bit suspect sometimes. But he had a very good idea of what he was doing.
Now the times have changed, the poor are quite done on, and we give to them their wages like beggars at the door. In the house they may not go, although they are but few. It was not so when best it rained, and this old hat was new, when this old hat was new.
The politics in folk music might be a little more front and centre at times, but there are some genres of music that might be seen as so bombastic that they are overtly apolitical.
So football chanting originated here in Norwich with On the Wall City. It's the oldest chant that's still sung to this day. Edward Elgar, the famous English composer, he was a Wolverhampton Wanderers fan, and he wrote a chant about a player who played for Wolves in the 1860s, I believe, but it didn't catch on the terraces and it wasn't sung at games like football chants are today. On Wall City is the oldest chant that's still sung to this day. That was written to celebrate sport in the city of Norwich, and there were numerous football teams at the time. They then merged into one football team, Norwich City, and to kind of celebrate that cohesion and to bring that sense of community of everyone coming together, they adopted On the Wall City, that was a song for all of them, to be the song for the club. So lots of clubs around the turn of the 20th century had like an anthem, and what they were folk songs essentially that were hyper-parochial about the place. So there was none of the kind of antagonism that modern football chanting has. They just had a song that celebrated their city or their community, and they would sing it before a game, much like they do in the US with college fight songs. There was just a song that celebrated that city, and they would sing it. It wasn't until the 1960s, when public transport became cheaper and the working week got shorter, that people started to follow their team away from home. And it was at that point that you had home and away fans rather than just home fans. Liverpool was singing songs that celebrated Liverpool, but by now they had pop songs to sing. So the Beatles and Cilla Black are known throughout the world as being from Liverpool, and Liverpool fans would sing Cilla Black songs verbatim as a celebration of Liverpool. And football chanting is by default a very, very visible and audio way of society communicating. So racism in particular was awful in the 1980s in the UK, when society was kind of feeling disempowered and there was a lot of unemployment. That shone through in the aggression in football chanting. Then fans started to self-police, the economy, the political situation in this country all improved, and the tone of chanting kind of improved, and racism died away, homophobia came in, and then that started to be self-policed, and that is improving. It's not gone away, but it's improving. And then what you found in the UK, at least, is after Brexit, racism has kind of crept in again, because as a society, we seem emboldened to talk about racism and to be more racist now. Like, as a society, that is creeping back. And if it's creeping back into society, it will creep back into football chanting, because those two things aren't separate. There was a famous thing in the 1980s where Margaret Thatcher complained to the Football Association that hooliganism was ruining the English reputation abroad. And the Football Association answered back and said, this isn't our problem, this isn't football's problem, this is society's problem, it's just reflected in football. And that is still the case to this day. Football's a very, very visible place, and chanting is by default very audio. So anything that you see in society is then reflected in chant.
Artists in India put their political agendas into that most bold of musical forms, the Bollywood musical.
These were moments of ways of telling indigenous Indian stories or Hindu stories under colonial rule as well. So there's a cultural political moment right there of how under colonial censorship, of how under colonial occupation, you're able to tell your own stories and develop your own cinema. When you get to the post-independence era, where you have films like Mother India, where you have films like Awara, Raj Kapoor, and Raj Kapoor was very, very much influenced in that film, Awara, by Citizen Kane. And also Mother India, made by Mehboob Khan, by communism as well. So you've got some interesting politics going on there about the nation being reconstructed. So we literally go on a journey with the two characters. So in Awara, with the Raju the tramp character, he borrows from Charlie Chaplin. And if you remember in the Hollywood context, Charlie Chaplin was this tramp figure, but a tramp figure that was negotiating and navigating not just class, but also the transition from moving from, if you like, the urban. Do I have a space in the urban? What is my role as a minority? And his relation to kind of capitalism as Hollywood was emerging. That's very much the story of the Awara character, the Raju character in the film Awara, where he is this Charlie Chaplin-esque tramp figure, but has been transposed for the Indian context. An Indian context moving from the rural to the urban, one which is very much experiencing huge divides amongst the rich and the poor. And what is his role in that? Does he take the path of criminality, or does he take on the path, or try to take on the path of respectability when there are very, very few options for him? So with Radha in Mother India, what we see is literally the politics of the nation being played out through her character, but on her body. The young woman, pre-bride, becomes a bride, has a young family, then becomes a single mother, then goes on to be a kind of a political figure in the village, particularly through partition, and then goes on to be a grandmother who has to literally take on various battles as well. So politics was always at the heart and centre of these popular Bollywood films, particularly when they had a social drama message or a social message. And this is carried on right the way through the present day. And it's about how the particular filmmakers, the directors, the producers, and the ensemble cast of the actors and actresses take on and mediate those messages for the audience.
You might think that the mere right to exist as who you are shouldn't be considered political, but sadly, it has been and continues to be. In the past 50 to 60 years in particular, the impact of queer culture on music cannot be understated.
I think gay culture it kind of rose, there was a hovering of kind of gay culture throughout the 80s up until that point, but I think it kind of burst through a lot more in 1984.
Relax, don't do it when you want to go to it. Relax, don't do it when you want to come. Relax, don't do it when you...
And that's the thing with Relax, it's such an incredible record, but when you think about it's primarily a dance rock sound, which is sort of, it succeeded eventually, because I mean it'd been knocking around in the charts for a while, and then it was that Top of the Pops performance at the beginning of the year. But I think people would have bought it anyway, but there's nothing specific. It depends on how you term the lyrics, do you know what I mean? I think when you couple the record of how it sounds and couple it with the video, yes, you get an idea of like what really is going on. But I think, a lot of people didn't really care, to be honest. And I think, that was kind of a turning point, because we're talking about it was kind of a landscape of kind of rife homophobia in the tabloids and all this sort of stuff, and I think the public were kind of a lot more sort of switched on than perhaps, our media and everything thought they were, to be honest. Even though the huge success of people like Culture Club and Soft Cell, it was easy to kind of dismiss or kind of consider Bowie a freak and all these sort of things. But again, like the normal looking of the normality of sort of people like Bronski Beat and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, where it helped that they didn't give a, don't get me wrong, the media and everything has just been appalling towards gay people over the years regardless, but I think it really helped to kind of help normalise the sound, and especially around the time of like AIDS, and we were kind of still fighting to kind of say, look, we're just normal people and all this sort of stuff, but we were up against huge homophobia. I think people like Stockington Walkman with Kylie and Rick Astley and all that sort of stuff really helped just to kind of it was 3 minutes of us being able to kind of just ignore all the real life noise and just be ourselves, and I think it sort of was really essential the way they helped. And you look at kind of, especially how like Europop and everything over the next sort of few years of the rest of the 90s, and it was kind of, it all ties back to kind of what began on gay dance floors. I think there's a new generation of people who just don't care. I think there's some hyper online kids. The genie is out of the bottle with a lot of things now. Or wider culture kind of avoids the fact of like, well, actually, no, there isn't a one or this or that with everything. And that's what we're in danger of kind of becoming back with, especially with rights. I've known and had trans people in my life for 25 years or so, and I dread to think what Sorry. I think, you know, they are just, there is this danger that people kind of pick off the weakest, and that's the thing. And I think it's just a really sort of terrifying, people just want to live. They want to live their own life. They want to do what they want with their own body. And I think because of culture wars and all this sort of stuff, you know, again, those 3-minute songs are also helpful, make you feel seen. And I think when you've got people like Billie Eilish and all this sort of stuff out there being huge stars.
So you're a tough guy, like it really rough guy, just can't get enough guy, just always a puff guy. I'm that bad type, make your mama sad type, make your girlfriend mad type, might seduce your dad type. I'm the bad guy.
Being in the closet was never even an option for them. They're just like, I am me, do you know what I mean? So I sort of worry about, perhaps, you know, I've got friends in America who are sort of scared about same-sex marriage, all this sort of stuff, where all these things could be stripped away again. And it'd be nice to not keep fighting. And then you're like, yeah, but if I don't, who will? You know, and, you know, there are still lots of arseholes out there, and under the name of religion or kind of all this sort of stuff. And I think, yeah, I'm quite scared, to be honest with you. Whereas, as I say, pop music is, for 3 minutes you're transported. When you're in some sort of shithole in some tiny little town and you're hearing somebody like Jimmy Somerville talking about Small Town Boy, or you're hearing Relax or whatever, or, you know, Liza Minnelli and Dusty Springfield, working with Derek Jarman, Bowie, the Pet Shop Boys, any of these divas on high energy records, you just suddenly feel seen for about 3 or 4 minutes, and that's music is the way that kind of, that's more direct. You know, the beauty of DJing, you know, you'll go up on the floor, you'll feel seen, you'll feel loved, you'll feel like somebody knows you exist.
Maybe the right is mostly angry because they have such a mediocre soundtrack. Ted Nugent or Paul McCartney isn't really much of a debate, is it? Speaking of, there's a very special something that we've kept under our hats, and out of all of the press and publicity about this series, it's time for a patented Shambles secret surprise guest. We were absolutely thrilled that while making this series, we sent an absolute Hail Mary email to Sir Paul McCartney's management about the series, and against all our expectations, he actually agreed to sit down with us for this episode for a very exclusive chat about the Beatles' overt political activism. Here's what he had to say. Music and comedy share a lot of similarities. Both can be a powerful shortcut to emotion and big and challenging ideas, so combining the two makes all the sense in the world.
I mean, music has it can burrow into your brain. It affects us chemically, like in a way that just words can't. And so I think using music for something like that is really fun, and also just like breaking the tension of things like that, of things like Brief, of things, you know, things that we shouldn't be saying out loud in a Western society. If we sing them and we make them enormous, then the laugh is larger, the release is bigger. And of course the healing's gonna be better because you have these vibrations in your brain that you didn't have when it was just said out loud or read from your stupid phone. You know, it's a really nice thing to share.
Your lasagna won't make up for my dead dad, but thank you so much. What's that more lasagna? Think you rad? Heat it up for lunch. Lasagna for tea, lasagna for me, lasagna till I die like my dead dad.
I feel like I can say anything if I put it to a melody. And some of the things I say in my show are not to a melody, and that's where I feel the most challenged. Like I have the songs and you can just say whatever you want, I think, and do whatever you want, and people kind of don't care. But then the things that I say in between I'm always like, oh gosh, I feel the tension of that because it's not as easy. But yeah, you can kind of get away with anything in a song, I think. I mean, but again, there's going to be people who tell you you're not allowed. People DM me and stuff, and I try not to look, but they tell me I can't talk about that stuff.
Yeah, music, even just underscoring will give people a chance to like feel however they want to feel without feeling looked at. I think in a comedy show a lot of the time, the audience is often nervous because they're frightened you're going to speak to them, and they're frightened they're not going to give the right reaction, you know, and like, what if it's not funny? What if I don't like it? They get really nervous. And I think when there's music involved, they have some relief because they know how to listen to music and nothing's expected of them. So it gives them some space to cry if there's something sad happening, or it gives them some space to sing along. I always try to put places in my shows where people can choose to sing along, or, you know, I'll put in a big joke there so they can have a laugh, or they can have a cry and let that out as well if they need to. Like, it's that same release, that laughing, crying, singing, that vagus nerve release that I think is really important for an audience, really important for a person. And I try to provide that in as many different ways because people express themselves differently. But I'm always like, here's your option, get it out. It's time to purge, let's go.
Like, I used to come on to the theme tune from RoboCop Rock Shop, and because I like the contrast between this fantastically bombastic, beautiful piece of film soundtrack and a man in a cardigan in a room above a pub.
I wanted to make a musical short, and Kate and I both wrote funny songs. We were not trying to make a band. We were trying to write songs for this short that we were both going to be in because it was the writer's strike. And we wrote a couple funny songs and we just like loved them. So we recorded them and we're making this short. But I booked a movie in South Africa, and so the short was not done. And I wanted to show my mom the songs. And so we, like with a little Sony Handycam, we just recorded them on my couch, and I couldn't email them because they were too big. And so my friend was like, oh, you can send them a YouTube link. And I was like, oh, okay. I did not know that other people could see it. I just didn't know, because my YouTube channel was my email address. So that's how little that I just didn't realize. And I sent it to my mom, went away for 3 months to do a movie. And when I came back, it had like 10,000 views. And I was like, wait, how did people, what's going on? We just truly, I mean, if you look at the videos, they're so poor quality. You can barely hear it. We're like far away on a couch and people were watching them.
And like can lead to like, and like can lead to love. Sure as the stars above, I'd really like to kiss you. Oh.
And we started to be like, oh, maybe there's something here. And then the creator of Scrubs called us and said, we want to use one of those songs on Scrubs. And we were like, what? Okay. And they used one of the songs on Scrubs. And so without really intentionally creating a band, we had already made money as a band. And we were like, I think we should write another song. And then it just went from there.
Music and comedy have been bedfellows since ancient Greece, be that in musicals or comedic songs. In the late 19th century, when novelty songs entered the lexicon, and throughout the 20th century, there are any number of hugely successful musical satirists and parody songs, from Tom Lear to Weird Al Yankovic. But when YouTube launched in 2005, it provided the perfect platform for comedy songs.
I think it's the visuals combined with it, because musical comedy videos are inherently better than musical comedy songs. And musical comedy videos were being played nowhere. There was that wasn't on MTV, except Weird Al. You could see Weird Al on MTV and no one else.
The attention to detail is what makes a lot of those videos. When we did the Smells Like Nirvana video, we used the same exact soundstage that Nirvana used. We used the same, several of the same cheerleaders, the same guy that played the janitor, even a lot of the same extras. So that kind of detail is kind of what helps the joke along, because you can see that it's very similar to the original, but it's just tweaked a little bit to make it funny.
So there wasn't really a home for that. And then unless you got your own TV show like Flight of the Conchords or something, it was just the perfect match of, you know, the visuals and the songs. And they just caught on like crazy.
Well, YouTube is great for people that have ideas and songs they want to get out there. It's really leveled the playing field because they aren't they don't have to go through some men in suits in some big building somewhere to say, yes, we'll put your song out. I mean, if they want to get their song out, they just upload it. And if it's good, you know, the cream rises to the top, as they say, and people will get to see the material. So I'll never again be the first person to do a parody of anything probably, but I will continue to strive to be the best.
I really don't like the culture of sometimes comedians will be like, and they don't say this about me, but they'll say it about other comedians, other musical comedians, be like, oh, you know, you don't have to write a joke because you've just got the same joke for 5 minutes. And it's like, no, that song has 40 different versions of the same joke, and it's being told through 2 different languages. One of them is music, and they have a skill that you don't have. You're jealous. Don't pretend you're better. It makes me really annoyed.
We tried to get all the advantages we could get. We're like, what can we do that regular comedians can't do? What can we do that men can't do? What can we tried to find our niche as much as possible. And we're like, yeah, we don't think anyone else can really say this, so we're gonna say it.
I don't want to lose him to someone who'll do him. I need to figure something out.
And I think I really want to finish with this because I think music, people think music is a reflection of what is going on in society, but I really think music is an active agent to change things in society and not only reflect them. I mean, if you ask Puerto Ricans after the Bad Bunny event, for example, they felt united, they felt stronger, even though they have been repressed for a number of years, but they feel powerful because they were recognized, you know, by the lyrics, by all the things that Bad Bunny put on stage. So I think it's that. I mean, we created just a fantastic way to connect our deeper feelings with sounds.
What's clear is an idea we keep coming back to. Music, in all its forms, is as incredibly powerful as it is popular. It can break us and it can unite us. And in the next episode, we're going to take a look at just how popular it is and why popular things end up being the things that are popular, and ultimately why my taste in music is better than yours.
Golden brown, texture like sun, lays me down. With my mind she runs throughout the night. No need to fight, never a frown with golden brown. Every time, just like the last, on her ship, tied to the mast. 2 distant lands, takes both my hands, never a frown with golden brown. Golden brown, fine a temptress. Through the ages, she's headed west. From far away, stays for a day, never a frown.